Hello everyone, we are Group Q and we're gonna present our project which analyze the factors affecting the crime rate in Switzerland. Despite being one of the safest countries in the world, a survey by Zurich University reveals that 61% of the Swiss feel an increase in insecurity. Our investigation is structured around three research questions. The first question examines the safety level across cantons and how they correspond to perception of insecurity. The second question looks for trends and patterns in crime rates among the cantons, while the third considers what external factors could be influential if the government aimed to reduce crime rates. We've analyzed crime data from the OFS and external factors for each canton, like urban area percentage, welfare, and GDP. This data will guide us in understanding the complexities of crime in Switzerland and pave the way for potential solutions.
So for our data extraction and data wrangling, we had too many types of crimes, and we decided to classify them arbitrarily into 5 categories called disturbance, homicide, integrity, violence, and theft. And we also had to translate all our external values into rates to avoid population bias. After that, we noticed that the Appenzell Road exterior canton had a very high disturbance rate, so we chose to replace it with the average rate of Switzerland. Otherwise, we had our own cluster for Appenzell. Now, for the first look at our data, we noticed that the trend observed by the Zurich University of Applied Science had were biased, and we also noticed that the crime rate in Switzerland was decreasing between 2012 and 2021. One on our supposition was that the crime rate in big cities was increasing, and that created a feeling of insecurity in Switzerland. Finally, we also noticed there are a strong difference between the canton, and we thought that the more correlated external value were the urbanization.
So we decide to find cluster based on types of crime. So we use the elbow method and we find that we have 4 clusters. So when we draw it on a FIS plot, we saw that they are significantly different. When we plot this on a map, we decided to name those clusters. So for example, there are cluster 1 that are city canton because it's Geneva and Basel. And so if we look at the tables, we saw that the mean based on the type of crime are significantly different, and it's also the same for external factors. And our biggest preoccupation was about the percentage of urban area, and we saw that it's highly correlated, but it's not exactly the same. And for example, we also saw that, for example, the education rate wasn't significant, whereas, for example, the social help was really different. And so if we focus on every cluster, we can find some difference. For example, cluster 1 have high level on every type of crime, cluster 2 have high violence and disturbance.
After that, we made a correlation matrix to know which external values were the most important, and here there are 2 correlation matrices in relation to the cluster 2, which are violence and disturbance. For the violence correlation, all factors are correlated, but in a different level. Welfare is the most correlated, employment rate and GDP per capita are quite similar, and the urbanization is not as high as we imagine. And for disturbance correlation, no value are strongly correlated. As for violence, welfare is the most correlated, and for both cases, people with lack of education have a weak or negative correlation, and GDP per capita not as high that we imagined.
Analyses lead to compelling insights on Swiss crime. Despite declining crime rates in cantons like Geneva and Zurich, a sense of insecurity persists, likely influenced by media and personal incidents. Research question 2's cluster analysis reveals similarity in crime types and external factors within these clusters. This suggests that targeted policies like those successfully implemented in Basel City and Geneva could be replicated across similar clusters for effectiveness. Research question 3 highlights that the urban area percentage isn't the key crime determinant. Instead, factors like GDP per capita significantly correlates with theft. Our approach suggests that the Swiss government could tailor policies for specific clusters to reduce crime rates more efficiently. Despite the fall in crime rates, the perceived insecurity suggests a need for visible police reinforcement in city center to reassure the public.
Now we will discuss about the limiter for analysis. The first problem that we occur was the external factors. Most of the external factors that we found were from national studies, and so we cannot exploit. We avoid to use some data, like for example the percentage of foreigner, because we assume that it's correlated with a lot of social factors. And also we think that problem of our study is that was only based on canton. And for example, if we find a policy good in Basel or in Geneva, so in cluster 1, it doesn't mean that it won't be useful, for example, in Lausanne or in Zurich. The problem is just that our analysis is based on canton, and for example, in Vaud or in Zurich, they are like highly populated place and also rural place. And so thank you everyone for listening our presentation.